So let's talk about nihilism. Well. If you were growing up in the 90s, you probably had your run with nihilism. And if you're growing up now, you may be even more prone to nihilistic views. And the reason why I say that is because nihilism thrives in despair when the conditions are not appropriate for the flourishing of human life. Then nihilism tends to happen. Carl Gustav Jung talked about how the art of the day can tell us a lot about the collective unconscious. And if you apply this principle to nihilistic art, you'll usually be able to see which times were rough, because usually the art would be a good indicator of the fact that everything's not fine. So nihilism goes hand in hand with crisis. If you have ever read decadent poets and whatnot, you will see there in their art that they are unhappy with the status quo. They don't agree with what's happening in the world around them, yet ultimately they don't see any way out. They seem to be desperate. They seem to come to the conclusion that nothing can change and humans are ultimately too evil to make any meaningful changes. So that is obviously not the entirety of nihilism. But if you don't know a lot about nihilism, an advice from me to you is don't even bother. Nihilism is not really worth exploring. And again, I say this as a person who experienced a period of nihilism in their life. So I used to read Friedrich Nietzsche. I don't know how you guys pronounce his name, but I used to enjoy, quote unquote, his aphorisms and his bitter and angry little works. And I mean, I still find some of his insights to be interesting, I guess is the word I'm looking for, but ultimately it's not of much use, to just philosophize about how the world is bad and everything is wrong and God is dead and we should go back to the good old days when we were noble savages, because that's stupid, okay? Yeah, I'm not a person who knows Nietzsche's work very well, but I ultimately found nothing but bleakness, despair, and the inability to change one's circumstances in his works. And this is what I tend to see in nihilistic art as well. This desperation that many of the nihilistic artists seem to experience is destructive and not constructive. And I don't think it's good for your mental health to spend a lot of time exposing yourself to destructiveness, because possibly something already is going on at the back of in your subconscious mind. So you don't need any more depressors in your life. So, and my personal experience with nihilism really taught me that if I don't enjoy any of the aspects of my life, there are very few things that I can do just sitting and brooding. I cannot really change my outward experience by thinking and pondering, even though I much appreciate the time I have spent in my youth thinking and pondering. I ultimately think that there was a healthier perspective for me at the time, and there was a healthier way for me to deal with the world surrounding me. And as I'm growing older, I'm realizing that if I cannot change my circumstances, well, I can adapt to my circumstances, which is not always possible, unfortunately, but then I can keep pushing and I can keep trying to find ways to change my circumstances in the way that is not destructive. It is very important to bear in mind that we have to construct many of the things around us, and that doesn't mean that we have ultimate free will and we get to decide upon our fates and whatnot. It just means that we have an influence on our lives. And yes, our outlook matters, but I know from experience how terrible it is when somebody tells you just change your outlook and everything's gonna be fine. And I'm not gonna tell you this because it's stupid, okay? I'm just gonna call it what it is. So, but ultimately, I found much help when I started learning communist theory. When I started looking at the world through a lens of empirical analysis, I was like, that's it. That's what I was lacking my entire life. I needed tools and instruments to analyze my conditions, to understand them for what they are, and then think together with others, hopefully, about how all of this can be changed. So, I found my salvation, if you will, in studying communism. So, reading Marx, reading Engels, reading Lenin, and the likes have really cured me of my nihilism, and I didn't need this dark and somber pillow of despair anymore to protect me from the reality, because I wasn't afraid of the reality anymore. When you understand something, it's less scary. It may still be dangerous, but it's not going to be the unknown. So if you are experiencing a nihilistic period in your life, try reading Marx. And maybe not Marx. Try reading some of the leftist philosophers. I don't know, Feuerbach or something. Or maybe just expose yourself in any way that's accessible to you to leftist view of the world and see if it helps you at all. Because ultimately, I believe it can help many problems. It's not gonna solve everyone's problems. It's not some kind of a magic cure. It's not a religion to be believed. It is a way of looking at life that is based on science, that is based on analyzing the actual empirical data. It's not based on magic, but all magic is science.